Hello everyone. Welcome back to Naruto Fix. Today we have another interesting What If Naruto story. Which is what if Naruto returned from his training journey so handsome and powerful that every girl in Konoha fell for him. Part 1. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Now, without wasting any time, let's begin. 3 years changed everything. Not just for Naruto Uzumaki. For Konoha. For everyone who knew him. And especially, for every girl in the village. The gates of Konoha stood tall beneath the afternoon sun. Villagers moved through the streets. Merchants sold their goods. Children played. Life felt peaceful, normal. Then two figures appeared on the road. A tall white-haired man. And beside him, a young shinobi wearing an orange and black jacket. Nobody paid attention at first. Why would they? Travelers arrived every day. Then the young man stepped into the sunlight. And the entire street went silent. Women stopped walking. Children stopped talking. Shopkeepers froze. Even birds seemed confused. Because the blonde shinobi looked nothing like the Naruto they remembered. Gone was the short, hyperactive kid who constantly chased after attention. Standing before them now was someone entirely different. Naruto had grown taller. Much taller. Broad shoulders. A lean athletic build. Sharp blue eyes. Sun-kissed skin from years of traveling. Messy blonde hair that somehow looked perfect despite clearly receiving zero attention. And most importantly, confidence. Not arrogance. Not pride. Confidence. The kind of confidence earned through hardship. Through training. Through surviving things that should have killed him. A nearby civilian woman accidentally dropped her groceries. Crash. Naruto immediately rushed over. Sorry. Let me help. The woman stared. Then stared harder. Then forgot how words worked. Naruto blinked. Are you okay? She nodded. Then shook her head. Then nodded again. Naruto looked confused. Jiraiya looked exhausted. Because this had been happening for months. The old Sannin already knew what was coming. Good luck, kid. Naruto frowned. What? Jiraiya simply walked away. Very quickly. As if escaping a natural disaster. Which honestly wasn't far from the truth. Several minutes later, Naruto reached the village center. The reactions only became worse. Much worse. A group of academy girls spotted him. Instant chaos. "WHO is that?" Exclamation mark quote. No idea. He's hot. Naruto nearly tripped. What? One of the girls gasped. Wait. The entire group froze. Naruto. Silence. Absolute silence. Then. That's Naruto. The screaming could probably be heard from another country. Meanwhile, inside the Hokage Tower, Tsunade suddenly paused. A strange feeling ran down her spine. Why do I hear screaming? Shizune nervously looked out the window. Then looked again. Then looked a third time. Lady Tsunade. Yes, I think Naruto is back. Tsunade smiled. Finally. Then she noticed Shizune's expression. The smile disappeared. What happened? Shizune pointed outside. Tsunade walked toward the window. Looked down. And immediately understood the problem. Because nearly every female civilian in the area was staring at Naruto. Some were smiling. Some were blushing. Some had forgotten where they were going. Tsunade slowly closed her eyes. Oh no. Elsewhere. Sakura Haruno walked through the village carrying groceries. Life was good. Training was improving. Medical ninjutsu was progressing. Everything felt normal. Then she heard screaming. Lots of screaming. Naturally she became concerned. Attack. Immediately Sakura ran toward the source. Prepared for danger. Prepared for battle. Prepared for anything. Then she saw him. Naruto. The grocery bag slipped from her hands. Crash. Oranges rolled everywhere. Sakura didn't notice. Because her brain had completely stopped working. Standing several meters away, Naruto laughed at something a villager said. The sunlight reflected in his blue eyes. The smile looked warm, natural, comforting. And suddenly Sakura realized something horrifying. Naruto had become handsome. Ridiculously handsome. Dangerously handsome. The kind of handsome that should probably require government approval. Her eye twitched. No. Several memories flashed through her mind. Orange jumpsuits. Pranks. Idiotic plans. Endless shouting. This was Naruto. Naruto wasn't supposed to look like that. It violated some kind of universal law. Then Naruto noticed her. Sakura-chan. The smile widened. Critical hit. Sakura's soul nearly left her body. Meanwhile, far across the village, Hinata Hyuga was enjoying a peaceful walk. Then she sensed familiar chakra. Her heart immediately skipped a beat. Naruto. He's back. The Hyuga heiress instantly turned toward the village center. Hope filled her chest. Excitement followed. Then she arrived. Then she saw him. And fainted. Immediately. Without warning. Just. Thud. Several bystanders panicked. Naruto looked concerned. Why did she fall over? Quote. Nobody answered. Because everyone was too busy staring at him. Hours later Team 7 reunited. Attempted to reunite. Because Sakura couldn't maintain eye contact for more than 3 seconds. Naruto eventually noticed. Are you sick? Sakura nearly punched him. Not because she was angry. Because that level of obliviousness should be illegal. Meanwhile Kakashi arrived. The copy ninja studied Naruto carefully. The growth was obvious. Not merely physical. His posture changed. His movements changed. His presence changed. The kid had matured. A lot. Then Kakashi noticed every female shinobi within 100 meters. His visible eye narrowed. Quote. Interesting. Naruto groaned. Everyone keeps saying that. Unfortunately, things were only beginning. Because the news spread quickly. Very quickly. Ino heard. Tenten heard. Tamari heard. Even women outside Konoha eventually heard. Stories spread like wildfire. Naruto Uzumaki had returned. Stronger. Smarter. More mature. And somehow unbelievably handsome. The problem. Nobody realized how powerful he'd become yet. Because while everyone was distracted by his appearance, Naruto had spent 3 years training under one of the legendary Sannin. And the surprises were far from over. Very far from over. Because soon the shinobi world would discover something shocking. Naruto hadn't just returned handsome. He had returned powerful enough to change everything. Naruto had returned. And Konoha was not prepared. Not even a little. The first few days became absolute chaos. Everywhere Naruto went, people stared. Not because he was famous. Not because he was the hero who defeated Gaara. Not because he trained under Jiraiya. Okay. Maybe partly because of those things. But mostly because nobody expected Naruto Uzumaki to come back looking like that. Even Naruto himself didn't understand it. One morning he walked through the market. Trying to buy groceries. A simple task. A very normal task. 5 minutes later, 3 shopkeepers had given him discounts. 2 civilian girls asked for his autograph. 1 woman gave him free food. Naruto stood in the middle of the street completely confused. What is happening? An old man smiled. People like you. Naruto frowned. They didn't 3 years ago. The old man laughed. Things change. Naruto wasn't convinced. Meanwhile, inside the Yamanaka flower shop, Ino stared out the window and saw Naruto walking by. The blonde Kunoichi immediately froze. Because seeing Naruto from a distance and seeing him up close were completely different experiences. The years had changed him. Not only physically, his entire aura felt different. The old Naruto used to desperately seek attention. This Naruto didn't need it. People naturally paid attention to him. That confidence made everything worse. Much worse. Ino immediately ducked behind a shelf. Then realized what she was doing. Then became annoyed. Then looked again. Then immediately regretted looking again. Because Naruto smiled at a little kid who recognized him. Critical damage. Ino buried her face in her hands. Why is this happening? Elsewhere, Tenten was training. Normally she focused entirely on improving herself. Today, not so much. Because Lee had mentioned Naruto's return. Several times. Very loudly. And now curiosity was destroying her concentration. Finally. Fine. Tenten put down her weapons. I'm going to see him. Several minutes later she arrived. Then saw Naruto helping an elderly woman carry supplies. Then watched him refuse payment. Then watched him smile. Then watched him leave. Tenten stood completely still. Oh. Suddenly she understood why people were acting weird. This was dangerous. Very dangerous. Back at Training Ground 7. Team Kakashi finally gathered. Naruto, Sakura, Kakashi, Sai, Yamato. The mission briefing started normally. Then Sakura accidentally spent 20 seconds staring at Naruto. Naruto immediately noticed. Quote, Do I have something on my face? Quote. Sakura almost died. No. Then why are you looking at me? No reason. Sai quietly observed. Then wrote something in a notebook. Naruto noticed. What are you writing? Sai smiled. Research. Nobody liked that answer. Several days later, the bell test happened again. Kakashi expected improvement. What he didn't expect was Naruto disappearing. Completely disappearing. 1 second he stood beside Sakura. The next, gone. Kakashi's Sharingan activated instantly. Because that speed wasn't normal. Not even close. Then Naruto appeared behind him. Holding a bell. Silence. Complete silence. Even Sakura froze. Sai froze. Yamato froze. Kakashi stared at the missing bell. Then at Naruto. Then at the missing bell again. Quote, When? Naruto scratched his head. I dunno. That answer somehow made it worse. Because Naruto genuinely didn't understand how impressive it was. The copy ninja slowly realized something. The village had been focusing on the wrong thing. Everyone noticed Naruto's appearance. Nobody noticed his power. Not yet. And that would change soon. Very soon. The Cage rescue mission arrived. Gaara was captured. The Akatsuki moved. And Team Kakashi departed. The journey remained mostly unchanged. Until they encountered Itachi. The moment Naruto sensed the Uchiha. His smile disappeared. The playful attitude vanished. The joking vanished. Everything vanished. For the first time since returning. People saw the shinobi Jiraiya had trained. Naruto stepped forward. Blue eyes calm. Focused. Dangerous. Even Kakashi noticed. The kid wasn't a kid anymore. The realization felt strange. During the battle Naruto's growth became obvious. Faster reactions. Better control. Sharper instincts. 3 years of brutal training finally showed results. And everyone watching understood. The handsome blonde returning to Konoha wasn't just attractive. He was becoming terrifyingly powerful. Back in the village, stories spread quickly. Every report made the legend bigger. Naruto defeated powerful enemies. Naruto mastered advanced techniques. Naruto challenged Akatsuki members. Every achievement attracted more attention. Especially from women. Unfortunately, Naruto remained completely oblivious. One evening after returning from a mission, Hinata finally gathered courage. Months of preparation. Weeks of planning. Countless rehearsals. Everything led to this moment. She approached Naruto. Heart racing. Hands shaking. And Naruto. He turned. And smiled. The Hyuga heiress nearly lost consciousness. Again. Hey Hinata. Hello. Several seconds passed. Then several more. Then several more. Naruto patiently waited. Hinata desperately tried speaking. Nothing happened. Words refused to cooperate. Eventually. I like. Naruto leaned forward. You like what? Quote. Ramen. Naruto's eyes lit up. Me too. Hinata wanted to disappear forever. Somewhere nearby. Neji watched everything. Then walked away. This situation exceeded his abilities. Months turned into years. Naruto continued growing stronger. The village continued admiring him. And the list of girls interested in him continued expanding. Ino, Hinata, Tenten, Sakura, Temari, several civilians, several shinobi, and increasingly concerning numbers of people from outside the village. The worst part, Naruto genuinely treated everyone kindly. Which made the problem infinitely worse. Because every smile felt special. Every compliment felt sincere. Every act of kindness felt personal. Naruto wasn't trying to make anyone fall for him. He simply cared, and that caring became impossible to ignore. One day Kakashi finally confronted him. Naruto. Yeah, you know people like you, right? Naruto nodded. Sure. Kakashi felt relieved. Finally some progress. Then Naruto continued. Everyone likes me. The silver-haired Jonin blinked. What? Naruto smiled. The village likes me now. Kakashi immediately understood. The idiot still didn't get it. Not even a little. And at that exact moment, the copy ninja accepted reality. Some battles simply couldn't be won. Especially against Naruto's density. Far away, beyond Konoha, the Akatsuki continued moving. Danger approached. War approached. Destiny approached. And standing at the center of it all was Naruto Uzumaki. Stronger than ever. More confident than ever. More handsome than ever. Completely unaware that half the village was developing feelings for him. And the other half was placing bets on when he would finally notice. The answer. Not anytime soon. The problem with Naruto Uzumaki wasn't that he was oblivious. The problem was that he was catastrophically oblivious. There was a difference. A very important difference. An oblivious person misses hints. Naruto missed entire confessions. An oblivious person overlooks feelings. Naruto overlooked emotional earthquakes. An oblivious person might misunderstand romance. Naruto could watch two girls fight over him and somehow conclude they were discussing weather patterns. Which was exactly why Konoha was suffering. One afternoon Naruto entered Ichiraku Ramen. A peaceful decision. A simple decision. A decision that immediately created chaos. The moment he sat down, 3 different girls entered. A civilian girl, a young kunoichi, and surprisingly, Ino. All 3 noticed Naruto. All 3 immediately changed direction. And all 3 somehow ended up sitting near him. Naruto happily ordered ramen, completely unaware of the battlefield forming around him. Ayame watched everything, then slowly turned toward Chuki. Should we charge admission? The ramen chef sighed. Honestly, yeah, maybe. Meanwhile Naruto continued eating. The civilian girl smiled. Naruto-san. Naruto looked up. I heard you're a hero. Naruto laughed awkwardly. Nah. Ino immediately interrupted. He's being modest. The civilian girl frowned. Oh. Quote. The kunoichi immediately joined. Actually she's right. Naruto blinked. What is happening? Nobody answered. Because explaining would take too long. And Naruto still wouldn't understand. Across the restaurant, several older villagers watched. One finally shook his head. The poor kid. Another nodded. He has no idea. The first villager laughed. Absolutely none. Hours later, Naruto finally escaped. Unfortunately, the village itself wasn't much safer. Everywhere he went, people greeted him, smiled at him, talked to him, and while most were simply friendly, the girls were becoming increasingly obvious. Increasingly, painfully, obvious. Yet Naruto remained blind. One evening Sakura finally snapped. The pink-haired kunoichi had endured enough. Years. Literal years. And somehow Naruto still hadn't figured out anything. So she decided direct action was necessary. Naruto. Yeah, do you think I'm pretty? Naruto immediately answered. Of course. Sakura froze. Then smiled. Then blushed. Then, Naruto continued. You always have been. Quote. Critical hit. Maximum damage. Sakura's brain nearly stopped functioning. Then Naruto added. Everyone knows that. The damage doubled. Because somehow he transformed a romantic moment into a public observation. Several nearby villagers physically cringed. One old woman actually covered her face. Painful. Another nodded. Extremely painful. Meanwhile Naruto looked confused. Again. Because confusion had become his natural state. The following week, Tsunade assigned Team Kakashi a mission. Simple. Routine. Nothing unusual. Unfortunately Naruto was involved, which meant unusual became inevitable. The mission took them through several towns. And every town produced the same result. Attention. A lot of attention. By now even Sai noticed the pattern. And Sai noticed everything, mostly because he treated human behavior like a research project. One evening he approached Naruto. Can I ask a question? Sure. Why do women like you? Naruto nearly choked. What? Sai remained serious. Statistically speaking, the number is unusually high. Naruto stared, then laughed. Good joke. Sai didn't laugh. Because he wasn't joking. Several seconds passed. Naruto slowly stopped laughing. Quote. Wait. Sai nodded. Hope appeared. Maybe. Finally. At last. Maybe Naruto was beginning to understand. Then Naruto said, "They like me because I'm future Hokage material." Sai walked away. Without another word. Some mysteries weren't worth solving. Meanwhile elsewhere, Hinata's suffering continued. The poor girl was trying. She really was. Training helped. Meditation helped. Breathing exercises helped. Nothing helped enough. Because every time Naruto smiled at her, progress vanished. One day he complimented her training. Hinata spent 3 days recovering. 3 entire days. Kurenai eventually became concerned. Not because of Hinata. Because of Naruto. Nobody should possess that much accidental power. Meanwhile, the legend of Naruto Uzumaki continued spreading. Not only across Konoha. Across the entire shinobi world. Stories traveled quickly. The hero of the sand. The savior of Konoha. The student of Jiraiya. The boy who defeated Akatsuki members. Every accomplishment made him more famous. Every victory made him more admired. And every story made more people curious. Including women from villages Naruto had never even visited. Which would become important later. Very important. Months passed. Naruto continued training. The Akatsuki threat grew. Sasuke became stronger. The world moved closer toward conflict. Yet somehow Naruto's accidental popularity remained undefeated. Then came the day everything escalated. The 5-Cage Summit. Leaders gathered. Representatives arrived. Political tension filled the air. And Naruto accidentally became one of the main topics. Not because of politics. Not because of military strength. Because several influential women from different villages knew exactly who he was. The realization horrified Shikamaru. Because if Naruto's love life became an international issue, there would be paperwork. Lots of paperwork. The Nara genius hated paperwork. With a passion. Back in Konoha, Naruto remained blissfully unaware. He spent the day training. Eating ramen. Training again. Eating more ramen. A perfectly productive schedule. Then Yamato approached him. The Jonin looked tired. Very tired. Naruto. Yeah. Random question. Okay. How many girls do you think like you? Naruto immediately answered. None. Yamato closed his eyes. Then looked toward the sky. Then looked toward the ground. Then toward Naruto. Finally, I'm going home. The conversation ended there. Because there was no saving this situation. No strategy. No plan. No jutsu. Nothing could overcome Naruto's density. Nothing. And somewhere deep inside Konoha, the universe itself seemed amused. Because while powerful enemies gathered, while wars approached, while destiny moved forward, the greatest mystery remained unsolved. Not the Akatsuki, not Madara, not the Sage of Six Paths, but how Naruto Uzumaki could be the most desired man in the shinobi world. And still think absolutely nobody liked him. The situation somehow became worse. Nobody knew how. Nobody understood how. Yet it happened anyway. A few days after Yamato gave up on explaining reality to Naruto, the village held a festival. A normal festival. A peaceful festival. A completely harmless festival. At least that was the plan. The moment Naruto arrived, the plan died. Immediately. The streets were packed. Lanterns illuminated every corner. Music echoed through the village. Children ran everywhere. Naruto smiled. This looks awesome. And that smile became the village's problem. Several girls noticed. Then several more. Then several dozen. Within 20 minutes, a crowd had somehow formed around Naruto. Not a dangerous crowd. Not an angry crowd. A very interested crowd. Naruto looked around nervously. Why are there so many people? Shikamaru happened to be nearby. He saw the situation, turned around, and walked away. Immediately, experience taught him valuable lessons. One of those lessons, Never stand near Naruto when women are involved. The survival rate drops dramatically. Meanwhile, Ino arrived. Then Sakura arrived. Then Hinata arrived. Then Tenten arrived. The atmosphere instantly changed. Several civilians sensed danger. Not physical danger. The other kind. The terrifying kind. Naruto remained clueless. Again, the blonde shinobi happily waved. Hey everyone. The reaction was catastrophic. Hinata nearly fainted. Sakura looked away. Ino suddenly became interested in a random wall. Tenten questioned her life choices. Naruto blinked. What happened? Nobody answered. Because nobody could explain. Not without creating an international incident. Hours later the festival ended. Naruto survived. Barely. The next morning he visited Ichiraku. As always. Because some things never change. While eating his fifth bowl, Jiraiya suddenly appeared. The Toad Sage looked unusually amused. Which immediately worried Naruto. Why are you smiling? Jiraiya sat down. I heard about the festival. Naruto groaned. Nothing happened. The old Sannin laughed so hard he nearly fell over. That reaction did not inspire confidence. Several minutes later Jiraiya finally calmed down. Then he asked a question. Naruto. Yeah, do you know what dating is? Naruto stared. What kind of question is that? A serious one. Naruto frowned. Of course I know. Jiraiya looked relieved. Finally. Maybe. Possibly. There was hope. Then Naruto continued. It's when two people go eat ramen together. Jiraiya immediately lost all hope. All of it. Every last bit. Gone. The old Sannin slowly covered his face. I failed. What? I failed as a teacher. Naruto remained confused. Naturally. Elsewhere. The girls of Konoha were having their own problems. Specifically, Naruto problems. One evening Ino and Sakura accidentally ended up discussing him. Which immediately became an argument. Then a debate. Then another argument. Neither girl noticed that both were defending Naruto. Passionately. Very passionately. Meanwhile Hinata listened from a distance. Then turned red. Then left. Because her chances of surviving that conversation were approximately zero. Back at the Hokage Tower. Tsunade was reviewing reports. Everything seemed normal. Mission reports. Budget reports. Security reports. Then she found a strange document. The title read, List of individuals frequently seen near Naruto Uzumaki. Tsunade frowned. Then opened it. 5 minutes later she closed it again. Slowly. Very slowly. Quote. Why is this so long? Shizune didn't answer. Because she already knew. The list contained multiple pages. Multiple pages. Tsunade suddenly understood why Jiraiya looked exhausted lately. Meanwhile, far away, news continued spreading. The hero of Konoha. The future Hokage. Naruto Uzumaki. Stories crossed borders. Villages. Countries. Nations. People who had never met him became curious. Interested. Intrigued. Some wanted to challenge him. Others wanted to meet him. And a surprising number simply wanted to see if the stories were true. Unfortunately for Naruto, most of the stories were true. Then came the mission. The mission that changed everything. A diplomatic assignment. Simple on paper. Dangerous in reality. Naruto was selected as part of the escort team. Because of course he was. The moment he heard, travel to another village. He became excited. Adventure. Missions. Food. Everything sounded great. Nobody else was excited. Because several people immediately realized what would happen. Naruto wasn't just famous in Konoha anymore. He was famous everywhere. And now he was going to meet even more people. Shikamaru actually felt sorry for future Naruto. A rare event. The journey began. Days passed. The team finally reached their destination. A large shinobi city. Bustling streets. Busy markets. Thousands of people. Naruto loved it. Then disaster struck. Not an enemy attack. Not an ambush. Something worse. Someone recognized him. A single civilian girl pointed. Naruto Uzumaki. Silence followed. Then another person turned. Then another. Then another. Within minutes, half the street knew. Naruto stared, then stared harder, then slowly looked toward his teammates. Why is everyone looking at me? Nobody answered, because nobody had enough energy left. And as the crowd continued growing, one terrifying realization entered everyone's mind. Konoha had been dealing with this for years. Now the rest of the shinobi world was about to experience it too. And somehow, someway, the situation was still getting worse. The crowd kept growing, and growing, and growing. Naruto stared at the hundreds of people surrounding him, then slowly pointed at himself. Why? The question was completely genuine, which somehow made the situation worse. Several civilians laughed. One woman shook her head. He's exactly like the stories. Naruto blinked. What stories? The woman immediately covered her mouth, because explaining would take hours. And Naruto still wouldn't understand. His teammates looked exhausted already. The diplomatic mission leader finally stepped forward. Move aside. The crowd reluctantly obeyed. Mostly. Many continued staring. Some waved. Others whispered excitedly. Naruto walked away looking deeply confused. The city, however, had already noticed him. That night, inside a local restaurant, conversations spread like wildfire. The hero of Konoha is here. I heard he defeated Akatsuki members. I heard he saved the Cage. I heard he's becoming the next Hokage. Quote, I heard he's handsome. The last comment somehow generated the most discussion. Meanwhile, Naruto sat upstairs eating dinner, completely unaware. As usual, the next morning, the diplomatic meeting officially began. Representatives from several villages attended. Merchants, officials, shinobi, nobles. Naruto expected boredom, and honestly, the meeting was boring, very boring, until several noble daughters entered the room. The moment they saw Naruto, they paused. Naruto noticed, finally, after years, actual progress. Then he smiled politely. The girls immediately looked away, blushing. Naruto frowned. His teammate nearly fell out of his chair, because Naruto actually noticed something. For the first time. Then Naruto continued. Maybe they think my jacket looks weird. The hope died instantly, painfully. Elsewhere, back in Konoha, the girls were not having a peaceful time. Not even remotely. Sakura sat inside a training field, trying to focus, trying very hard. Unfortunately, her thoughts kept drifting toward Naruto, specifically the older Naruto, the taller Naruto, the confident Naruto, which annoyed her a lot, because this was Naruto, the same Naruto who once transformed into Sakura to prank people, the same Naruto who painted the Hokage monument, the same Naruto who once got stuck upside down in a tree. How was she supposed to take him seriously now? The answer: she wasn't. Yet somehow, she kept doing exactly that. Nearby, Ino was suffering similar problems, though she refused to admit it. Ever. Under any circumstances, even torture probably wouldn't work. Meanwhile, Hinata remained the strongest contender for most affected by Naruto syndrome. Every conversation, every smile, every compliment, maximum damage, and the poor girl didn't even realize that many others were experiencing the same thing. Back on the mission, Naruto wandered through the city after finishing his duties. The streets were lively. Colorful lanterns decorated buildings. Food stalls lined every corner. Music echoed through the air. Naruto loved it. Then trouble appeared. 3 local shinobi approached. Not hostile, not friendly, curious. One of them folded his arms. So you're Naruto Uzumaki? Naruto nodded. Yep. The shinobi studied him carefully, then frowned. You don't seem special. Naruto shrugged. Okay. The answer completely ruined the confrontation. The shinobi blinked. What? Naruto pointed at himself. I'm just me. The 3 visitors stared, because that wasn't the answer they expected. Not even close. Most famous people became arrogant. Most heroes enjoyed attention. Most legends acted important. Naruto acted like Naruto, which somehow made him more likable. A nearby girl overheard the conversation, then smiled, then told her friends, then they told other people. And suddenly Naruto had another problem. Again. Because somehow his simple conversation became a story. The hero of Konoha is humble. The rumor spread immediately. Naruto remained unaware. Naturally. Days later. The mission ended. The team returned home. Naruto expected relief. Instead he found a queue. An actual queue. Outside his apartment. People waiting. Naruto stared. What? The line stretched around the corner. Naruto looked left. More people. Looked right. Even more people. Then he spotted Kakashi. The copy ninja stood nearby. Watching. Amused. Very amused. Kakashi-sensei. Yes. What is that? Kakashi looked at the line. Then at Naruto. Then back at the line. Consequences. Naruto hated that answer. The people waiting carried gifts. Letters. Food. Flowers. Naruto immediately panicked. I didn't do anything. Which was technically true. That was the problem. He never did anything intentionally. Everything happened naturally. And natural charisma was far more dangerous than artificial charm. Meanwhile, far beyond Konoha, far beyond Fire Country, far beyond the nations, news continued spreading. The legend grew larger. The stories became bigger. And somewhere, someone important finally heard them. A princess. Young. Beautiful. Powerful. She listened carefully as travelers described Naruto Uzumaki. The stories sounded exaggerated, impossible, unrealistic, yet something about them felt genuine. Eventually she smiled, then spoke a sentence that would cause Naruto enormous problems later. I'd like to meet him. And Destiny immediately decided to make that happen. Unfortunately for Naruto, Destiny had a terrible sense of humor. And his peaceful life was about to become far more complicated than ever before. The queue outside Naruto's apartment did not disappear. If anything, it got longer. Naruto stood at the entrance. Staring. Then staring harder. Then rubbing his eyes. The line remained. This isn't real. A little girl holding flowers tilted her head. It is. Quote. Naruto immediately regretted speaking. Because now everyone noticed him. The crowd erupted. Naruto-sama, welcome back. Can you sign this? Can I get a picture? I brought cookies. Naruto's survival instincts activated. He slammed the apartment door shut. Immediately. Inside. Silence. Then. A knock. Another knock. Then another. Naruto slowly slid down the wall. What did I do? Nobody answered. Because honestly, nobody knew. Meanwhile across the village, Tsunade was laughing. Hard. Very hard. Shizune looked concerned. Lady Tsunade. Yes. Should we help him? The fifth Hokage wiped away tears. No. Why? Because it's funny. Quote. A completely irresponsible answer. A completely accurate answer. Meanwhile, Naruto eventually escaped through the window. Again. Several Anbu watching nearby nodded knowingly. This wasn't the first time. Probably wouldn't be the last. Hours later, Naruto finally found peace. Or so he thought. The blonde shinobi sat atop the Hokage monument. The wind felt nice. The village looked beautiful. Nobody was around. Perfect. Then footsteps approached. Naruto sighed. Without turning around. How did you find me? A familiar voice answered. You're not exactly hard to find. Naruto looked back. Sakura. Standing behind him. The pink-haired Kunoichi smiled slightly. For a moment, neither spoke. The sunset painted the sky orange. The village stretched below them. It felt peaceful, comfortable, different. Sakura sat beside him. Several minutes passed. Then Naruto finally spoke. Everyone's acting weird. Sakura almost laughed. Almost. Because hearing Naruto say that was unbelievably ironic. Maybe. Naruto frowned. No, seriously. Quote. Sakura looked away. The slight smile returned. Maybe people are finally noticing you. Naruto blinked. What does that mean? Sakura immediately regretted saying anything. Because explaining Naruto was like explaining mathematics to a brick wall. Possible. Technically. Extremely difficult. Instead she changed the subject. You're stronger. Naruto smiled. So are you. The answer came instantly. Without hesitation. Without thought. Completely genuine. Sakura froze. Then looked away. Again. Because Naruto's greatest weapon had never been the Rasengan. It was sincerity. And sincerity was unfair. Very unfair. Meanwhile elsewhere, Ino had arrived at the flower shop, only to discover she couldn't focus. Again, every time she arranged flowers, a certain blonde idiot appeared in her thoughts. The situation annoyed her greatly, especially because she knew other girls were experiencing the same thing. That somehow made it worse. Much worse. Across the Hyuga compound, Hinata sat quietly, holding a cup of tea, thinking. Unfortunately, thinking about Naruto. Again, the poor girl had reached a point where hearing his name increased her heart rate. Seeing him was even worse. Actually talking to him, a critical threat to public safety. Back in the village center, a different problem was forming. Because Naruto's popularity wasn't limited to civilians anymore. Young Kunoichi admired him. Academy students admired him. Even some Chunin and Jonin respected him. Stories spread faster every day. The hero of Konoha, the student of Jiraiya, the future Hokage, the boy who never gives up. Every title added fuel to the fire. And the fire was becoming enormous. Then came the mission, a simple escort assignment, at least on paper. Naruto joined several shinobi and departed Konoha. The destination wasn't important. What happened during the journey was. Because halfway through the trip, the group stopped in a border town. A normal town, a peaceful town, until somebody recognized Naruto. Again, the process had become familiar. One person pointed, then another, then 20 more. Naruto immediately noticed. Oh no, progress. Actual progress. Naruto was finally beginning to understand that something strange was happening. Not the cause, not the reason, just the fact that it existed. Unfortunately, that tiny bit of awareness created new problems. Because now Naruto became self-conscious. Very self-conscious. One woman smiled. Naruto panicked. Another waved. Naruto panicked harder. A third asked for an autograph. Naruto nearly jumped through a window. His teammates watched everything, amused, very amused, especially Shikamaru, because seeing Naruto struggle with social situations was hilarious. For years everyone else suffered. Now it was Naruto's turn. Justice had finally arrived. Days later, the mission ended successfully. The team returned home, and Naruto immediately discovered another pile of letters. Bigger than the last pile. Much bigger. At this point his apartment looked less like a home and more like a postal office. Naruto picked up one envelope. Then another. Then another. Eventually he found one without a sender. Curious, he opened it. Inside was a simple message. The stories don't do you justice. Naruto stared. Then stared harder. Then slowly folded the paper. What does that even mean? He had no idea. What Naruto didn't know, what nobody knew, was that his fame had already crossed national borders. Powerful people were hearing about him. Important people, people capable of changing the future. And many of them were becoming curious. Very curious. Because the legend of Naruto Uzumaki was no longer confined to Konoha. It was becoming something much bigger. Something that would soon affect the entire shinobi world. And the poor blonde idiot at the center of it all still believed people were just being friendly. Which meant the real chaos hadn't even started yet. The princess was trouble. Naruto knew it, not because she was evil, not because she was dangerous, because she was nice. And every time someone nice entered his life, chaos followed. The dinner lasted much longer than expected. The princess asked questions, lots of questions. About Konoha, about missions, about becoming Hokage, about ramen, especially ramen. Naruto happily explained everything. 30 minutes later the princess knew more about Ichiraku ramen than most Konoha citizens. Meanwhile palace attendants watched from a distance. And misunderstood absolutely everything. He smiled. She smiled too. They're laughing. Oh no. The rumors multiplied instantly. Naruto remained unaware. Naturally. The following morning, he planned to leave. A simple plan. A reasonable plan. A plan destiny immediately ruined. Because bandits attacked a nearby village. The kingdom requested help. Naruto volunteered. Without hesitation. Without thinking. Without realizing, the princess decided to accompany him. Several guards objected. The princess ignored them. Naruto didn't understand why everyone looked stressed. By noon they reached the village. The situation was bad. Burned homes. Injured civilians. Destroyed supplies. Naruto's expression immediately changed. The cheerful smile disappeared. The joking disappeared. Everything disappeared. Only determination remained. The princess noticed instantly, and for the first time, she saw the side of Naruto the stories always talked about. The hero. Naruto spent hours helping people, repairing buildings, carrying supplies, rescuing survivors, never complaining, never stopping. The villagers quickly gathered around him. Not because he was famous. Because he genuinely cared. An elderly woman thanked him. Naruto smiled. A child hugged him. Naruto smiled. An injured villager worried about rebuilding. Naruto promised everything would be okay. The princess watched silently, slowly understanding why people admired him so much. The stories weren't exaggerated. If anything, they understated the truth. That evening, the bandits returned. Dozens of them, armed, aggressive, confident. Their leader laughed when he saw Naruto. One kid. Naruto sighed. People always said that. The bandits charged. The villagers panicked. The princess worried. Then Naruto formed a hand sign. Shadow clones exploded across the battlefield. Hundreds. Then thousands. The bandits froze. The villagers froze. The princess froze. The leader blinked. Then blinked again. That's cheating. Naruto grinned. 5 minutes later the battle ended. Completely. The bandits surrendered. The villagers celebrated. The princess stared. Because no report truly captured Naruto's strength. Seeing it firsthand was different. Very different. That night, the kingdom hosted a celebration. Music filled the streets. Lanterns illuminated the city. People laughed. And once again, Naruto became the center of attention. The princess sat beside him, which immediately created problems, because several noble daughters were also attending. And they all recognized Naruto. The atmosphere became strangely competitive. Naruto noticed none of it. Absolutely none. One noble girl complimented him. Naruto thanked her. Another asked about Konoha. Naruto answered. A third laughed at his jokes. Naruto laughed too. The princess slowly realized something. Being interested in Naruto was difficult. Not because Naruto was rude. Not because Naruto was arrogant. Because Naruto treated everyone kindly. Exactly the same, which made standing out nearly impossible. Meanwhile, back in Konoha, the girls received another report. Apparently Naruto saved an entire village. Again, Sakura wasn't surprised. Hinata smiled proudly. Ino pretended not to care. Nobody believed her, not even Ino. Days later Naruto finally returned home. The moment he entered Konoha's gates, people greeted him. Villagers waved. Children smiled. Shopkeepers called out to him. The familiar warmth made Naruto grin. This was home. No matter where he traveled. No matter who he met. Konoha would always be home. Unfortunately. Home contained Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Tenten, and several other girls waiting to hear about the princess. Naruto had no idea. He happily walked toward Ichiraku. Then noticed multiple familiar faces staring at him. The atmosphere felt strange. Very strange. Naruto scratched his head. Did I miss something? The answer came immediately. Yes. Multiple voices at once. Naruto jumped. What? The girls exchanged looks. Then Sakura stepped forward. Calmly. Suspiciously calmly. So, Naruto immediately became nervous. Yeah, we heard you met a princess. Naruto relaxed. Oh. Several girls narrowed their eyes. Because that was entirely the wrong reaction. She was nice. Silence. Dangerous silence. Naruto continued talking. We helped some villagers. The silence became even more dangerous. Then we ate dinner. Critical damage. We talked a lot. Maximum damage. The girls stared. Naruto smiled innocently. completely unaware he was digging his own grave. And somewhere far away, the princess looked toward the horizon, thinking about a loud blonde shinobi who wanted to become Hokage. Smiling despite herself, because meeting Naruto Uzumaki was something people rarely forgot, and destiny was far from finished with him. In fact, the number of girls interested in Naruto was about to increase dramatically. Because the stories spreading across the shinobi world were only getting bigger. And soon, new faces would arrive in Konoha, all wanting to meet the same person. Naruto Uzumaki, the hero who unknowingly stole hearts everywhere he went. Naruto had made a mistake. A very big mistake. Unfortunately, he had no idea what the mistake was. The moment he mentioned having dinner with the princess, the atmosphere changed. Sakura smiled, which was terrifying. Ino smiled, which was somehow worse. Even Hinata looked unusually serious. Naruto immediately sensed danger. Not shinobi danger. The other kind. The mysterious female danger he never understood. So, Sakura spoke calmly. What did you talk about? Naruto blinked. Lots of stuff. The girls waited. Naruto continued. Ramen. Silence. Becoming Hokage. More silence. The weather. The silence became painful. And a weird bird that stole my food. Sakura slowly closed her eyes. Ino looked toward the sky. Hinata looked relieved. Naruto looked confused. Again, as usual. Meanwhile, far from Konoha, the princess sat inside her palace library. A book rested in her lap. Unfortunately, she hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. Because her thoughts kept drifting toward a certain blonde ninja. His smile, his determination, his ridiculous obsession with ramen. The princess sighed, then immediately became annoyed with herself. Because she was a princess. She had important responsibilities. She shouldn't be sitting around thinking about Naruto Uzumaki. Unfortunately. Her heart disagreed. Back in Konoha, life returned to normal. At least for Naruto. For everyone else, not exactly. Because Naruto's popularity continued growing. Every mission report, every heroic act, every success, made the stories bigger. The hero of Konoha. The future Hokage. The boy who changed lives. The titles kept increasing. And with them, the number of admirers. One afternoon Naruto visited the training grounds. Looking for peace. A foolish decision. Because peace avoided Naruto. The moment he arrived, Tenten was training nearby. The weapons specialist noticed him immediately. Naruto waved. Tenten waved back. Then accidentally threw a kunai in the wrong direction. The target survived. Barely. Naruto scratched his head. Are you okay? Tenten immediately turned away. Fine. She was not fine. Several meters away, Neji watched everything. Then sighed. Everyone is doomed. Quote. Lee nodded. The power of youth is terrifying. Neither of them were talking about combat. Meanwhile, Naruto's legend reached another country. Then another. Then another. At this point stories about him traveled faster than official government reports. A feat few shinobi ever achieved. One evening Tsunade received visitors. Important visitors. Nobles. Representatives. Diplomats. The meeting started normally. Then one representative casually asked, "How is Naruto Uzumaki doing?" Quote. Tsunade blinked. What? Another representative joined. Is it true he defeated an Akatsuki member? A third leaned forward. And is he really as handsome as people claim? The room became silent. Tsunade slowly lowered her paperwork. Then looked toward Shizune. Then back toward the representatives. Then toward the ceiling. Because somehow, Naruto had become an international discussion topic. Which felt unfair. Very unfair. Meanwhile, Naruto remained completely unaware. He spent the evening eating ramen. As usual. Then training. As usual. Then eating more ramen. Also as usual. Nothing changed. At least from his perspective. Several weeks passed. Then something unexpected happened. A festival invitation arrived. Not unusual. Naruto received invitations constantly now. The unusual part. The sender. The princess. Naruto stared at the letter. Then read it again. Then again. The invitation was simple, a celebration, a cultural event, a chance to visit, nothing suspicious, which made it extremely suspicious. Naruto showed the letter to Kakashi. The copy ninja read it, then immediately laughed. What's funny? Nothing. Kakashi lied. Poorly. Naruto remained suspicious. Everyone seemed to know something he didn't. And honestly, that was becoming a pattern. Days later, Naruto accepted the invitation. Because of course he did. He thought it sounded fun. Which meant disaster was inevitable. Across Konoha, the news spread instantly. Sakura heard. Ino heard. Hinata heard. Tenten heard. The collective reaction could probably be felt from space. Naruto noticed none of it. Absolutely none. Because Naruto Uzumaki possessed many talents. Combat, leadership, determination, understanding romance was not one of them. And as he prepared for another journey, destiny quietly smiled, because the upcoming festival wouldn't just bring Naruto closer to the princess. It would introduce several new people into his life. People who had heard the stories. People who wanted to meet him. People who were already curious. And once they met Naruto in person, things would become far more complicated. For everyone, especially Naruto. The journey began 3 days later. Naruto stood at Konoha's gates carrying a small travel bag. The festival invitation rested safely inside his jacket. The weather was perfect. The road stretched endlessly ahead. Everything seemed peaceful, which meant something would definitely go wrong. Naruto had enough experience to know that. Have a safe trip, Kakashi said. Thanks. And try not to accidentally become engaged. Naruto blinked. What? Quote, nothing. The copy ninja immediately disappeared, leaving Naruto confused. Again, several rooftops away, Sakura nearly threw a rock at Kakashi. Because that joke wasn't helping. Meanwhile, the princess's kingdom was preparing for the festival. Workers decorated streets, musicians practiced performances, merchants arranged goods. The entire capital buzzed with excitement. And one particular princess kept checking the road leading toward the city. Far more often than necessary. Her attendants noticed. Naturally. Because attendants noticed everything. One finally smiled. Your Highness. The princess froze. Yes. Are you waiting for someone? The princess immediately looked away. No. The attendant stared. Long. Hard. Then decided not to argue. Because everyone already knew. Several days later, Naruto finally arrived. The capital looked even more impressive than before. Colorful banners filled the streets. Lanterns hung from every building. Music echoed throughout the city. Naruto grinned. This is awesome. The guards recognized him immediately. And before long, word spread. The hero of Konoha had arrived. Again, Naruto still didn't understand why that mattered. Meanwhile, the princess received the news. Then immediately stood up. Then sat down. Then stood up again. Then pretended she wasn't excited. Nobody believed her. Not even herself. Their reunion happened near the palace gardens. Naruto waved happily. Hey. The princess smiled. And for a brief moment, the entire garden seemed brighter. At least from Naruto's perspective. They spent hours talking. Walking through the festival. Exploring shops. Trying local food. The princess laughed more in a single afternoon than she had in weeks. Naruto simply enjoyed himself. Because spending time with friends was always fun. The word, friend, nearly caused emotional damage to several nearby attendants. One guard actually walked away. He couldn't watch anymore. The density was too powerful. As night fell, the festival reached its peak. Thousands gathered in the central square. Fireworks illuminated the sky. Music filled the air. The atmosphere felt magical. Naruto looked upward. Beautiful. The princess glanced at him. Then quickly looked away. Because the fireworks weren't the reason she was smiling. Unfortunately, destiny had other plans. Because several foreign delegations also attended the festival. And among them, were daughters of nobles from neighboring kingdoms. Many had heard stories about Naruto. The famous hero. The future Hokage. The blonde shinobi everyone talked about. Curiosity brought them closer. Meeting him made things worse. Much worse. One noblewoman joined a conversation. Then another. Then another. Before long Naruto found himself surrounded. Again. The princess watched. Then frowned. For the first time, Naruto noticed something wrong. The princess immediately smiled. No. Naruto nodded. Okay. And moved on. The princess almost threw a flower pot at him. Not because she was angry. Because Naruto had the emotional awareness of a brick. A very handsome brick. But still a brick. The next day brought trouble. Real trouble. Not social trouble. Not romantic trouble. Shinobi trouble. A group of rogue ninja attacked the festival. Explosions erupted. People screamed. Chaos spread. The celebration instantly transformed into a battlefield. Naruto moved immediately. No hesitation. No fear. Only action. Shadow clones appeared everywhere. Hundreds. Then thousands. Civilians were evacuated. Children rescued. Injured people protected. The princess watched from safety. Her heart pounding. Because this wasn't the cheerful Naruto she knew. This was the hero. The warrior. The shinobi who carried entire villages on his shoulders. The battle didn't last long. The rogue ninja never stood a chance. Naruto defeated them quickly. Yet the people remembered. Not the battle. The way he protected others first. The way he smiled even after winning. The way he checked on civilians before himself. Stories spread immediately. Again. And somehow, the legend grew larger. Weeks later, when Naruto finally prepared to return to Konoha, the entire capital gathered to see him off. The sight shocked him. Why is everyone here? Nobody answered. Because the answer was obvious to everyone except Naruto. The princess stepped forward. For a brief moment, it looked like she wanted to say something important. Something personal. Something she'd spent days thinking about. Naruto waited. The princess opened her mouth. Then, come visit again. Naruto smiled. Sure. The answer came instantly. Simple. Honest. The princess smiled back. And somehow that single promise felt more valuable than any royal treasure. As Naruto walked away, he remained completely unaware. Unaware of the feelings he'd left behind. Unaware of the hearts he'd touched. Unaware of the growing number of people thinking about him. Because Naruto Uzumaki only focused on moving forward. And unfortunately for him, the more he moved forward, the more people fell for him. Back in Konoha, several girls sensed absolutely nothing. Yet somehow, all of them suddenly felt concerned. Very concerned. Because deep down, they knew one thing. Naruto had gone on another trip. And whenever Naruto went anywhere, he always came back with new friends. The problem, this time those friends might become competition. And the chaos was only beginning. Naruto returned to Konoha expecting peace. He should have known better. The moment he entered the village gates, something felt different. Not dangerous. Not threatening. Just different. People smiled when they saw him. Children waved. Shopkeepers greeted him. The familiar warmth of home wrapped around him. Naruto smiled. No matter where he traveled. No matter who he met. Konoha would always be home. Unfortunately, home also contained several girls waiting for answers. And those girls had questions. Lots of questions. The interrogation began less than 24 hours later. Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Tenten, all somehow ended up in the same place. Naruto immediately sensed danger. What did I do? Nobody answered. Which was somehow worse. Then came the questions. How was the trip? Quote, it was great. How was the princess? She was great. Silence. Dangerous silence. Naruto blinked. What? The girls exchanged looks. Then immediately changed the subject. Because explaining things to Naruto required more effort than fighting S-rank criminals. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the shinobi world, stories continued spreading. The hero of Konoha, the future Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki, the boy who never gave up, the shinobi who inspired everyone around him, the man who somehow left an unforgettable impression wherever he went. His legend continued growing. Village after village, country after country, people heard his name, and remembered it. Because Naruto wasn't special because of power. Not because of looks. Not because of fame. Naruto was special because he made people believe. Believe in themselves. Believe in tomorrow. Believe things could become better. That was something no amount of strength could replace. Months passed. The world slowly moved toward the future. New challenges appeared. New enemies emerged. New adventures waited. And through it all, Naruto remained exactly the same. Still loud. Still stubborn. Still obsessed with ramen. Still completely unaware of how many hearts he had captured. One evening he stood atop the Hokage monument. Watching the sunset. The village glowed beneath him. Beautiful. Peaceful. Alive. Everything he ever wanted to protect. A gentle breeze moved through his blonde hair. Naruto smiled. One day, he would become Hokage. One day, he would protect everyone. One day, he would achieve his dream. Behind him, several familiar girls happened to be looking toward the monument. And all of them happened to notice the same person standing there. None said a word. None needed to. Because some feelings didn't require words. Far away, a princess looked toward the horizon and smiled. Elsewhere, other girls across the shinobi world remembered a certain blonde ninja. And destiny quietly laughed. Because Naruto Uzumaki still had absolutely no idea what was happening. Not even a little. But that was a story for another day. For now, the future Hokage stood proudly above the village he loved. Unaware of the chaos surrounding him. Unaware of the feelings growing around him. Unaware that his greatest challenge might not be becoming Hokage. But surviving the attention of every girl who had fallen for him. And thus ended the first chapter of the legend. The story of how Naruto Uzumaki returned from his training journey. And accidentally became the most desired man in the shinobi world.